Hey everybody, it's Miss Greta here today. I hope you all are having a great day today. Today, we are going to talk about integrated solid waste management. And that's some big words, so let's talk about what that really means. We're just talking about the different ways that different facilities and people all work together to take care of our waste. Anything that we throw away or anything that we have to get rid of is a waste, right? And I know Miss Mika has talked with you all in the last video a lot about different ways that we can limit how much waste goes to the landfill that gets buried in our earth by reducing, reusing, recycling, composting. But it's not just up to us to make sure all of this waste is that we can save from the landfill is getting saved. There's a lot of different facilities and a lot of different workers that have to help us. So what is municipal solid waste? That sounds like a big word, doesn't it? It just means trash. The municipal solid waste is our trash. And there are a lot of different ways that we manage our waste. We can reduce it from the source. Reduce means to make smaller, right? Like Miss Mika talked about, just making different decisions so that we have less trash to throw away to begin with. Maybe by not eating out, maybe by paying attention when we're shopping and buying things that have less packaging or no packaging. Like Miss Mika talked about, if you're getting a drink, getting the drink that's in the one big container instead of a lot of individual small containers, because we're going to have less waste that way, aren't we? Another way that we can manage our waste is by recycling. And we've talked a lot about this already this year. We can recycle our plastic number ones and number twos. We can recycle our paper, our cardboard, our aluminum. And there are other things that we can recycle that we may not have talked a whole lot about, like if you're changing your oil on your car, your truck, or your four-wheeler at home, that dirty oil needs to be recycled. And we actually, at every one of our convenience centers, at all the dumps in the county, there is a big vat that you put that dirty oil in so it can get cleaned and get recycled to be used over again to make sure that that oil isn't going somewhere to pollute our earth. Miss Mika talked to you about composting, and again, we'll talk a little more about that later in the year and talk exactly about how composting works. But in short, composting is a way that we can take some of our foods, like our fruit and vegetable scraps, and we can help them to become an additive to put into the dirt in the earth. And it's even really good for gardening, so that those food scraps are not getting put into the landfill. And then finally, there are going to be some things left over that we cannot reduce, recycle, compost, or reuse. When we reuse something, we just find another use for it, right? To use it a different way before we throw it away. That there's some of these things left over are going to end up in a landfill or a waste combustor. Now here we have a landfill, which we've talked about. We know that's where the trash that's left over gets buried into the earth, right? But some places have a waste to energy facility or a waste combustor, and that's a place where they will burn the leftover waste and sometimes even turn it into energy. And we'll share with you all a video so that you can learn a little bit more about exactly how those waste combustors or waste to energy facilities might work. So again, our source reduction is a way that we're going to try to use less packaging, and maybe even sometimes when we reduce things from the source, maybe it is up to our manufacturers and our businesses that are selling us products to create ways to sell products to us that use less packaging. And our recycling, we talked about our paper and our cardboard, our plastic bottles. And now there are some things that are recyclable, and we're able to recycle them, it's possible to recycle them, that we don't necessarily recycle around here, like rubber, like tires, like glass. Some places can recycle glass. We don't do that here because we don't have a glass crusher, but glass is something that is possible to recycle. And on our composting, which we'll talk a lot more about that later on in the year when we do a composting lesson, but with our composting, that's when we're going to take our fruit and vegetable scraps and some other kinds of food scraps, and maybe even like grass clippings or leaves from the yard, things that come from nature, and we're going to help it to go back into nature, okay? And when we compost, we use brown stuff, we use green stuff, we need air, and we need water. Our brown stuff is going to be like our dried, dead plant parts, like our leaves or pine needles. And that stuff is high in carbon. It has a lot of carbon in it, the brown stuff does. The green stuff is our fresh living plants, like grass clippings, or like our orange peelings, or apple cores, or sometimes weeds or other plants. And the green stuff is really high in the element nitrogen. The green stuff has the nitrogen. So the brown stuff is carbon, the green stuff is nitrogen. And then just like anything else, our compost is going to need a little bit of air. So sometimes we might need to stir it a little bit as we're composting, and it also is going to need a little bit of water. Now, we don't mean we're going to make a puddle out of it. We don't want it to be soaking wet, but we're just going to make sure that if it's getting really dried out, especially maybe if we're talking about composting in the summertime and there's a lot of sun on it and high temperatures, we might need to sprinkle a little water on there from time to time just to make sure it's staying moist. When we compost, the thing we're not going to add to our compost is any kind of meat product or milk product. So anything that comes from an animal, we're not going to use on there, except maybe like our eggshells. That's our exception there. But anything that comes from nature, like plants, fruits, and vegetables, those things are good for our compost, okay? Let's see. Now, we all get to watch a video that will show you a little bit more about the waste to energy plant. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about it. So our waste is going to go, like the waste that would end up in the landfill, it's going to go on a truck to the tipping hall, and then it gets stored into a bunker. And when it gets burned, it heats up and gets burned up, and it creates steam. And now that steam gets to get used to make electricity. And then the ash that's left over, let's think about it for a minute. If you have a fire, you have a fire pit outside and you have a fire, or maybe some of you might use wood to heat your homes at home. We know when we take that, we've got this big old pile of firewood, or we've got this big old pile of kindling, and we take that and we burn it. What is left? Nothing but some ashes, right? So we did have this big stack of firewood, and now it's just this little bitty pile of ashes. So also, when we use a waste to energy plant, or we use combustion to get rid of our waste, what we're going to have left is just going to be a very small amount of ash that's going to end up in the landfill instead of all of this trash, right? So there's a few good things about a waste to energy facility. Okay, so let's just one more time, let's talk a little bit about, we've got our ways to reduce our waste, our ways that we manage our waste, right? We can use the 3 R's. We can reduce from the beginning of how we buy things, or the choices that we make, or even the ways that our manufacturers and businesses are creating things with less packaging maybe, or maybe in a package that can be used for something else. So we can reduce, right? We can recycle. That's pulling out anything that is recyclable, and it's going to get made into something brand new. It's going to get a whole new life. So a plastic water bottle might end up becoming part of a toy, or it could even end up becoming part of your clothing. Some clothes are made from synthetic fibers. Recycling, right? We can reuse some of those things that we can get a new life. I know one of my favorite things is like my empty sour cream or yogurt containers. They make awesome Tupperware. Lots of ways that we can reuse things instead of even recycling them or throwing them away into the landfill, right? And composting our fruit and vegetable scraps, and composting other natural things that come from nature, putting them back into the earth instead of putting them into the landfill where it takes up space. And then finally, our waste to energy facility, where we have those. We don't have one around here, but some places do, where they can burn the waste to create other kinds of energy, right? And it ends up with just a little bit of ash that's going to end up in the landfill. But there's still going to be some things are going to end up, they just have to be thrown away. Okay, we're going to end up with some stuff. We're going to have some tissues. We're going to have some plastics that can't be recycled. There's going to be, or we've already reused it as many times as we can. Some things are going to end up in the landfill. However, if you think back to Miss Mika's waste audit, right? When we do use all those 3 R's and we compost, we cut down what would be one huge big bag full of trash to just a little bitty tiny tiny bag of trash that ends up in the landfill. So it takes a lot of work, and it takes some smart brain effort there, using your brains to make different decisions, right? And to remember, and to get, and when you first start out, sometimes it's a little hard, but as you focus on it and think about it every day and you keep trying, once you get in the habit of it, it becomes really easy to reduce our waste. So I want you all to think about those things, and maybe you're already doing some of these. Maybe you already recycle aluminum cans at home. Maybe you're already doing that. But I want you to think about something you can do to add one more, not everything at once, but just one more little method to help us reduce our waste. So maybe if you're only recycling aluminum cans, see if you can start recycling your cardboard or your paper or something else too, okay? Or maybe if you're already recycling everything, maybe you might want to talk to your family about starting a way to compost, saving your fruit and vegetable scraps and putting them out for the garden. So come up with one new way that you can help us to reduce our waste, and see if you can start implementing that at home, okay? All right, thank you all for listening. I hope you have a good day, and we'll see you soon. Bye.